All right, I want to talk about the difference between browsers and grazers in the Justice trio or quartet. In herbivorous animals, we have browsers and then like a middle section and then grazers. So this is like browsers are going to be things that browse on bushes and trees and like are more selective. And then grazers are going to be things that are just like sticking their head down on the ground and eating grasses. So over here, a good thing to think about is like a giraffe. It's selective. It's eating branches and leaves using its long tongue. It's more selective. And then over here, think of like a cow. It's just eating grass and walking around. And I think we can extend that to the Justice Pokemon. Like if we look over at Terrakion, this thing is absolutely a grazer. It's got this big body. It's got kind of this weird like down-sloping neck. It's got a really wide jaw, and this looks exactly like white rhinoceros. And rhinos are coincidentally really good at showing the difference between grazers and browsers. White rhinoceros have the wide mouth, and these are grazers, and they have this long forehead so that they can stick it and reach the ground easier because they're just eating grass. Whereas black rhinoceros have this more pointed and kind of like a prehensile lip because they're browsing and more selective of their trees and their brushes and their shrubs. And browsers are where Virizion comes into play. This thing is like tall, it's slender, it's got this long neck, and it's got a much more narrow snout. So it's going to be more selective and like get into the nitty gritty of the trees and the large shrubs that this thing is going to be eating. And then if we go back to our chart here, which is from a paper published in 1989, I believe, I think Cobalion is fitting in the middle here. This is kind of like an intermediate body type, like it's more stocky, it's a little bit stouter, its muzzle is kind of similar to Virizion, but it's not wide like Terrakion's is. Which leaves Keldeo, and this one is kind of a toss-up. Like on one hand, I could see this thing being a browser, think of like a moose. This is a water type, so maybe this thing is semi-aquatic, and it's like eating aquatic vegetation or plants that grow around waterways. But it's also fairly small and has this really wide muzzle, so I could also see this being a grazer, so think of more like a horse, so it's just kind of eating grass and low-lying plants.